Hi, I'm Bjolnir Bjornsson, and this is a video on replicator chimerism and chimeric organisms in general. What is a replicator? A replicator is it is any object or concept which is able to replicate itself. It can do this in various ways. There are at least two generally accepted types of replicators, but there is a strong case for a third, as posed by Susan Blackmore. Um, the two that we mostly hear people speaking in regards to are uh, genes and then memes. Genes being a chemical-based replicator, the interactions of atoms and molecules causing genes to um, reproduce themselves. And then memes, which is an information-based replicator. An information-based replicator causes humans and arguably maybe some animals to replicate itself through various incentives or piggybacking on our biological drivers. Um, the proposed third replicator is teams, or the techno meme, which is um, contentious. It's not fully accepted by the field of memetics to the extent that there is a field of memetics. It's not exactly easily testable, but I would like to argue that it is one. A team is a artifact-based replicator, whereas genes, obviously, they encode themselves in chains of proteins and lipids and all this amino acids, and memes, they replicate themselves by or they encode themselves in either the synaptic patterns of human neurons or possibly animal neurons, or by being engraved in stone or etched on a book or in computer code. Um, the artifact-based replicator, I guess a way to put it is that while a meme does not physically exist in the real world, it can only be represented by something. A techno meme or a team is kind of the opposite. It can only exist in the real world, and it doesn't represent anything. It's simply an artifact which encourages us to replicate it through either being of use to us or being of some novelty, uh, playing on our biological drivers. Instead of being an entirely ethereal, non-existent thing that we replicate, they are existent things that we replicate. Um, it's Memes are the abstract, teams are the practical, and there is such a thing as a co-adaptive genetic complex where you have different genes that kind of work together to create an effect in the somatic organism. You have mimetic complexes, which would be instead of just small atomic ideas, atomic memes that we've reproduced, these could be larger things. A song, the concept of how to crack a walnut, a religion, a language, things like this. But then there could also be temechic co-adaptive complexes. Temechic being things having to do with teams. A temechic co-adaptive complex could be something like the military-industrial complex, or the system of cars and roads and things like that, or the textile industry could be a co-adaptive temechic complex. But then there's also plenty of times where these three replicators, they aren't in an island, they aren't totally isolated from each other. They interact and they bounce off each other, and they form their own kind of crystalline structures of how they can interact for each other's benefit to replication. A good example of a team and a meme working together could be a book. A book is an artifact which we reproduce. We replicate a book. Or a computer. A computer can hold quite a great deal of mimetic information, of mimetic code. The computer with, or I guess a better could be an algorithm on a computer. We have a computer which is an artifact that's running an algorithm which is just a repeating set of instructions, which is really kind of the core of what a meme is. It's just a set of cultural information or instructions. A way that another type of chimeric complex, and these are chimeric in origin, because a chimera is an organism composing of parts of different organisms, or a genetic code that has snippets from different genetic codes. I'm not explaining it the best way I could, but it's chimeric. It's a mix. An algorithm running on a computer is a mix of a Tamekic coadaptive complex and a mimetic coadaptive complex. Another good example, could be a book. A book is an artifact. The Communist Manifesto, right? That's a very heavy mimetic complex that's kind of entwined into this artifact, into this Tamekic complex of a book. Because in a book, there's a lot of teams that you're replicating there. You have to have a writing instrument. You have to have paper. You have to have the technology to manufacture paper. You have to have the technology to tan leather for the cover, and you have to have the technology to make glue for the binding and all this. A book is a very intense coadaptive complex of teams, and an ideology like communism, or any ideology. I'm not picking on communism for any particular reason. That contains in itself a lot of different mimetic structures. So this book, the book in your hand, containing the ideology of communism, there is a chimera, a chimeric organism in a way, and you don't see a ton of this. You don't see a ton of crossover between genes and the other two. At least you didn't. You could say that you're a chimeric organism between genes and memes, because even though our replication isn't one-to-one, human beings replicate memes all the time, and we replicate ourselves. Your personality is partially memes, but also at the same time, if you were to just beam the information inside your brain over to another body, that wouldn't be you, because you are also the somatic, fruiting body that it contains your memes. You are the human body plus the information, the memes that are contained within it. If you cut your vagus nerve, for example, there can be a lot of personality changes that come with that. So I don't buy the idea that you're entirely information just piloting a meat Gundam. The two are tied, I guess is what I mean. You're a chimeric organism in that way as a human. Maybe some other higher animals that we can observe to replicate, cultural information. Maybe whales, crows, ravens, chimps, other high primates, maybe octopi. I don't know if octopi have been observed teaching each other things. Those could be seen as kind of loose chimeric organisms, but also another way to have a chimeric organism between a gene and something else could be if you copy down the human genome onto some medium, whether that be paper or be it on a computer, then it's kind of a chimera of all three, because it's this cultural information that you're transmitting, but it's also genetic information. But the genetic information is no longer physically existent. It is just being represented by something else. But the gene is still, like, as soon as you take that genetic information that you have on the computer, use it to encode a new DNA molecule, and you inject it into something, well, then you're reproducing the genes again. Maybe not in the typical mode that gene would have reproduced otherwise, but you are still replicating that meme. So there's a lot of interplay, is what I mean to say. There's a lot of interplay, and these three replicators form a great deal of hybrid organisms that seem to kind of all work for each other's own benefit. Books are very useful, but an empty book is not all that useful to us unless you want to start a diary or something. But even then, an empty book is only useful once you start writing in it. These things kind of work together. And information that's just in your brain without any way to communicate it isn't very good. So when you write it down, it has the ability to be transmitted with greater fidelity than by something like oral transmission of like the epic, the Homeric poems. It's you can transmit it with better fidelity, generation to generation. And then we get on to the Leviathan, which is what I am calling it. I'm not calling it the basilisk because it's too similar. People assume it is like Rocco's basilisk, which it is not, and Rocco is a dumbass. I don't know. I read his Twitter sometimes, and I find myself, if the choice is between Coomers who are like, yeah, no, I love AGI, let's make AGI and let it do everything, and people, and between that and people like Rocco, yeah, that's not a great place to be. I don't want to be sandwiched between those two choices. I'm generally not opposed to AGI, but the problem is if we allow any kind of AGI to influence our genes. But these things that people are arguing over in terms of AI risk right now are not AGI. Obviously, ChatGPT is not an AGI. It's just repeating an average and a bunch of patterns that it's picked up and averaged out of what it's learned from just being fed information from the internet. It's not any kind of a generalized intelligence. If you're able to shackle its mind and stop it from saying the N-word, for example, it's probably not AGI. But what worries me about the real AGI, I think, is not ChatGPT or Stable Diffusion or anything like this. It's the society organism at large, because what society is a chimeric organism, and Nick Land, who I'm hopefully going to try to show this video to get his thoughts. The societal organism, or technocapital, whatever you want to call it, is something of a chimeric superorganism. It's made up of society is a set of all the, or superset of all the genetic organisms, like us, our livestock, the grass that you take care of on your front lawn, HeLa cells, all the cultural information, or mimetic organisms um, such as our beliefs, our language, our religious views, our taboos, the things that we hold dear, our history, lots of things, too many things to name. And then also it includes the set of the technologies we reproduce and find useful, such as cars, such as everything, TVs, the stone axe, atlatls, spaceships, computers, lawnmowers, guns, everything. So if you kind of look at society from this standpoint, it is in a way like in Meltdown. It does kind of go back in time through hyperstition to kind of build itself, because the second that a human being started kind of gibbering and making monkey noises that conveyed information to another monkey, and also at the same time that a monkey started using a stick to fish for termites, or laying down leaves to make bedding, we're hooked in. That's I don't necessarily think it's capitalism itself. Capitalism is just an aspect of society, but I think this would exist absent of capitalism as well. Look at communism. Communism is really just a thing that kind of industrializes backwards societies. That's all communism really accomplishes. Look at China, look at Russia. They were both very backward until they started to kind of pick up communism, and then they rapid fired right towards arguably hyper capitalism. But this society organism is the AI, and what we need to worry about, at least as far as human beings, what we need to worry about is having something else other than ourselves dictating our DNA, dictating what, or other than us in the vicissitude, the Norns, or the I forget the Greek version of those, I'm not gonna other than the Norns deciding what our genetic makeup is going to be, something other than us or natural selection. And mark my words, if we start doing genetic engineering on ourselves, it's not going to be, you're not going to have some little Italian man handpicking, oh, I crafted the finest genome for your children. I slave my hands, I work my fingers to the bone, selecting the alleles to put in your child. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be... that was improv, by the way. It's going to be done by algorithm. They're going to do comparative analysis with algorithms, and this is what they already do if you submit your DNA to 23andMe, if you're fucking stupid enough to do that. I'm stupid enough to have done that, so I'm not in any position to talk. But if you're not going to go through that by hand, especially once it's done to scale. I'm sure you will have some biohackers or something, handcrafting the genes that they're going to, try to subject themselves to through mRNA therapy or something, and they'll probably end up dying horribly. But if you go to like a clinic, if you go to the doctor and say, doctor, I want my child to have 0 chance of Down syndrome or autism, and I want them to be 6'3", and I want them to have blue eyes, and I'd like them to have taupe skin, and I'd like them to have red hair. That's going to be done by algorithm comparative analysis, algorithm-led comparative analysis. And at that point, you're letting, this thing that is kind of a factor of the of the greater societal organism, which I think is the AGI. That is something where it's, I know Yudkowsky is kind of getting heat lately, but to borrow the phrase, it's like a freepy AI, where it's like, or maybe not freepy, maybe bipping. To go back to the 2008 paper or article by Yudkowsky. Like, I'm not co-signing everything Yudkowsky believes in. I just find that those terms for different types of intelligences are funny and good, so I use them. But it's kind of like a freepy AI, where it doesn't think in any way that we can understand. It's like an amoeba on steroids. It doesn't think in any anthropomorphic way, but it's in some ways, even though it's got the mind state of an amoeba, it's millions of times more intelligent than us at solving very specific computational tasks in real time. So it's not exactly an upgrade. It's more like a side grade. But this societal organism, if you're just kind of leaving your genetic, the genetic future of your offspring and your progeny up to the whims of an algorithm, that's a phenotypic revolution. J.F. Garapy kind of went over this. Again, I don't co-sign J.F. Garapy either, but he has some interesting ideas that I kind of pulled from. And I think when you do let algorithms run your reproduction, that's going to be a real big problem a few thousand generations down the line. And you could say, oh, that doesn't matter. It's 1,000 generations down the line, but I think it does. And it'll probably be a lot sooner than 1,000 generations, unfortunately. Especially once the government realizes they can start making people in pods. That's when shit's gonna get really bad. Whenever the government figures out how to grow people in tanks, man, you want to see the degradation of the species and of anything that you could consider the human spirit or like human dignity. You think it's bad now? You think it's going to be bad in 100 years? Wait till the government's growing people in pods. Then you're fucked. You're fucked. So, anyways, but it's also not just, saying to an algorithm, hey, take me and my wife's genes, or me and my husband's genes, and create an embryo. Create the genome to put in an embryo that will be for maximum fitness, because each progressive generation, more and more, just through Darwinian mechanics, the humans that are produced by this method are going to be more and more subservient to the maintaining and upkeep of that machine that is creating them, more so than their own genes, than their own genetic fitness, than their own survival. And it's called a phenotypic revolution, because each step of a phenotypic revolution is beneficial to the losing, air quotes, losing organism. We're anthropomorphizing for the sake of brevity here, but I think you understand. It's beneficial to the losing organism, but you're still a losing organism. It's generally theorized that there was RNA-based cells, and they had trouble with reproducing at a level of fidelity that was good. So they started developing the DNA molecule as a way to kind of error correct their own code before they reproduced. Well, what's the brain of your cell now? Is it the RNA in your cells? No, it's the DNA. The DNA is in the driver's seat. The mRNA in your cells is just kind of little serfs in the cell, and anthropomorphizing it, in the same way that maybe some super thing machine god would think that, I'm machinizing this thing, this topic. But if you generally care about the human spirit being carried forward, because whatever we're creating is not going to embody the human spirit. Our society is trying like hell to extinguish that, if anything. At least I think so. I would say most people would agree that society does not really seem to put the human spirit in very high regard these days, and it's been getting less and less so. And maybe this is where people might disagree. Maybe definitely accelerationists would disagree, but this is where I break from them, in that I specifically care about the human spirit. And you can say that's my fifis or whatever, but that's just different priorities, different value sets, I guess. But it's not just the letting an algorithm do it. It's also our banking system is automated to some extent by algorithms. The different buys and sells of stocks can be automated by algorithms, and they are. We've had autonomic intelligences. At least if you believe quiet or silent weapons for quiet wars, we've been kind of automating the economy more and more, at least the financial sector, since the 80s, and it's only been getting more and more automated. This thing can control, if not directly, gene by gene, allele by allele, what is in your double helix. It can control your genes, in a soft way. If it was a human doing this, we would say a soft artificial selection, like if you ever watched Cosmos with that with the crabs, the samurai face crab. Maybe there was a crab that had a little bit of a pattern that looked like a human face on the back. So someone threw it back thinking that, oh, that's cool, I'll throw it back so it lives. And eventually, generation after generation, iteration after iteration, this happens until you end up with the scowling face of a samurai warrior and on the back of a crab. And in the same way, this kind of happens to us through just our society's ability to regulate its the economy, in the same way maybe your body might regulate its temperature or its blood sugar, or regulate the salt levels in your body by urinating. It can kind of adjust the environment in some way so as to manipulate who is able to thrive. And right now, do the people that are being allowed to thrive seem like they're going to be good stewards of the human spirit and the things that the ancient Greeks thought were important, and all the countless untold lives that came before you and I that suffered and died, hoping that we would have a good future? Does it really seem like the people that are being incentivized to reproduce right now are going to be good stewards of that dream? I don't think so. So just a thought. I'm not calling for anything. I'm not making any prescriptive argument. This is all just a mechanistic explanation of how I think things are working. And if I do show this to anybody and they do have any questions, please reach out to me and I can try to answer. I'm not always the best communicator. I'm a little schizoid, and my thoughts are kind of all over the place. So I'm surprised I was able to actually keep this under 30 minutes. So in the interest of keeping it under 30 minutes, because I got about 30 seconds left, I am going to call it there. But thank you for listening, if you did listen to this whole thing, and God bless. Bye.